In 1974, a psychologist named Elizabeth Loftus showed a group of people a film of a car accident. Afterwards, she asked half the group one question: how fast were the cars going when they hit each other? The other half got the same question with a single word swapped. They changed the word smashed instead of the word hit. The smashed group estimated higher speeds. Same film, same crash, fundamentally the same question with one word changed. A week later, everyone came back and answered a new question: did you see the broken glass? Now, there was no broken glass in the film. The smash group remembered it anyways. So, one word inside one question changed what people reported seeing. Then it reached back and rewrote what they remembered a week later. Somebody did this to you and to me this week. A question steered our answer, and we never noticed. Last week, I showed you that your brain cannot refuse a question. You hear one, you start answering, whether you agree to or not. This week is the other side of that power. And if every question forces an answer, then how the question is built, constructed, decides which answer you give and which answer you get back. Questions have an anatomy that almost nobody ever looks at. Now, before we're done today, a motorcycle taxi ride that I took in Bangkok is going to show you what a question built right could ultimately reveal. Let's get into it. Every question you ask carries three things, whether you put them there on purpose or not. First, it carries assumptions, the things it treats as already settled. For instance, if you ask the question, why did the launch fail? You've rolled the launch a failure before anybody ever speaks. Two, it carries scope, the range of answers it permits. If I ask you coffee or tea, that permits you to exactly two options, two answers. If I change that to say, well, what should we drink? It opens up the options that we can choose from. And three, it carries a load, the specific word or words that steer the answer. That's what SMASH did, and nobody in that study felt steered. The steering is invisible to the person answering, and most of the time to the person asking too. They don't think about it. So let's talk about it. Once you see these parts, you can take any question apart. Take what did the launch fail one more time. It assumes failure before anybody answers. Its scope is only explanations, and fail is the loaded word doing the steering. Hold on to that one. We're going to rebuild it later. Let's start with the ones built to do real damage. If you get someone coming out of a meeting and they ask you that question, that presentation was fantastic, wasn't it? That's what I call a tag question. A statement dressed up as a question, built so every answer is closed off except agreement. The person asking it isn't really asking a question, not in any ways that risk hearing something different. They are collecting signatures, approvals. When lawyers use them in court, it's called leading the witness. When managers use them in conference rooms, it's called alignment. Tag questions did real damage for years at HP when I was there as the CTO. It was in the design reviews. Every product went through design reviews before customer briefings when we were launching or announcing brand new products. One review was for a prototype, one of our first laptops of what is now called the thin and light category. The product team wanted to lead that category without straying too far from what was already being sold. That's the trade-off tag questions live in. Nobody wants to sound negative about it, So the pushback arrived dressed as agreement. The question was, will we still have 4 USB ports? Right? You don't get thin and light with a case full of legacy ports, and the designers knew it. I watched the expression of exasperation cross their face. Now, before it became a battle, I stepped in and rebuilt the question. I asked, what's the right mix of ports for this segment and why? Then I backed it up with, have we tested that mix with target customers? Crazy, right? The question is it was replaced by, is it the right mix? And why is it? The answer came back fast. No need. We know what the customer wants. Now, I nearly smacked my forehead. One rebuilt question had uncovered the real problems, and it wasn't ports. It was an untested assumption sitting in the middle of a flagship product plan. That's what tag questions cost you. The entire point of asking a question is to get information, get input, get ideas. A tag question collects compliance instead. Enough of them, and people just stop bringing you anything you don't already know and don't already believe. Real questions are split fundamentally into two kinds of categories: factual and investigative. A factual question retrieves information. How many units did we sell this week? You may not know the answer, but you know exactly how to get it. One phone call away. Factual questions keep the world running. They just can't uncover anything because they only retrieve what somebody already knows. An investigative question can't be answered with a yes or no or a simple lookup of an answer. It's divergent. More than one correct answer exists, so the person answering it has to go investigate. You felt this difference last week. What is half of 13 is a factual question. How many ways could you answer the question, what is half of 13, is an investigative question. One is arithmetic, the other is the one that a classroom spent a lot of time answering it and came up with 32 different ways of answering that question. Now, Socrates built his entire way of teaching on investigative questions, pushing every student past, oh, I've heard it said that, until they could say what they themselves thought and why. The first step towards knowledge, he insisted, is admitting yours is incomplete. So here's the definition I've worked from for years. What makes a great question? A great question makes the other person genuinely think before they can answer, and it surfaces an insight that has been eluding them for a long time. Both halves matter. The first half calls you real effort. You have to go look. The second half is the payoff. You see something you've been looking at for years and never actually have seen, and it surfaces possibilities you'd never found on your own. So, how do you build one? How do you build them? And it's not as hard as it sounds. You can do it in 4 moves. Here is the order I use them in. Now, you've already watched 3 of them work in that design review, but let's walk through them. Number 1, strip the answer out. Reread your question and find the smuggled conclusion. Words like right and wasn't it come out first. Then the buried assumptions. Why did the launch fail? Becomes what happened when we launched. Number 2, open the exits. If it can be answered with yes, no, or a single lookup, it's a factual question. That's fine when information is all you need. When you want discovery, when you want to innovate, rebuild it until more than one correct answer exists. The rebuild is usually small. Should we do this becomes, what are the ways this could work? And what are the ways it dies? Number 3, weigh every word. This is Loftus' lesson. How do you make this cheaper? And what happens if we triple the price? point at the same product, and they will never produce the same ideas. There is no neutral wording. Every word carries load. So choose your words deliberately instead of just inheriting it or just reusing questions that everybody else uses. And number four, aim it where nobody is looking. If you can already predict the answer, the question is just decoration. Point it at something unexamined. The assumption everyone stopped checking. The customer nobody ever talks to. A great question should surprise you. Now, what is it that a well-built question uncovers? Let me tell you a personal story. I'm going to go way back. This is late 1994, Bangkok, Thailand. Half an hour, I'm stuck in traffic. 28 minutes until a very critical meeting. At 18 minutes, I gave up. I jumped out of the limo that the company had arranged for me and hailed a motorcycle taxi. Have you ever ridden on one of these things? It's 125 cc's of absolute terror. Flat out through the heat. I had my briefcase. Yes, back then we still carried briefcases. I had a clutch to my chest. I'm in a suit, white shirt, tie, right? Somewhere between the tuk-tuks, I started thinking about the machine underneath me. Cheap, efficient transportation. The streets were flooded with them. And on the other side of the world, Harley Davidson was selling motorcycles as a big ticket luxury. A product that began as cheap transportation for the American working man had become a premium item that people waited months for. Now, in that evolution, somebody had to ask a question like, what if we stop trying to make this cheaper and go the other way? Everything needed to see that opportunity that had been lying in plain sight for decades, waiting for someone to ask for it. That's the payoff of this craft. The next discovery in your business is probably sitting in an assumption nobody has checked in years, waiting on the right question to find it. So here's a practice exercise. Before your next meeting, write down the one question you most need to ask, exactly as you would naturally say it. Then take it apart on paper. What does it assume? What answers does it permit? Which words are steering and in what direction? Rebuild it with the 4 moves and ask the rebuilt version instead. Pay attention to what comes back if the original never would have surfaced. Now, as we wrap up today, this is part 2 of a 3-part series on questions as the skill behind better thinking, better ideas, and better innovation. Next is on the specific questions I spent 20 years collecting and testing, the ones that reliably uncover what everybody else misses. Now, the full show notes for today are down over at philmckinney.com. Now, if you want more than just the show episodes, check out my articles over on Substack, including the first 4 chapters of my new book. Subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss the next episode. And don't forget to hit the notification bell if you want to know the moment the new episode is up. And we will talk to you next week. Bye-bye.